Okay, so here's the thing. We had 3 rules that we learned, right? We have that if you have the same base and you're multiplying, really big deal, multiplying, then what you do is you add your exponents, right? Then what was our other one? Our other one was if you have an exponent and then you have another exponent, what you do is you multiply the exponents. Hey, I got thinking too far ahead, didn't I? All right, that's a 4. Okay, so 2 times 4, and then we get 4 to the 8th. And then we had our third rule, and that was if you have 2 things being multiplied inside a bubble and you have another exponent, then you are going to apply the exponent to both of them. So we get negative 2 to the 3rd, and we get x cubed to the 3rd. And then we keep on going with any rules that happen, like that's going to be negative 8, and then we multiply those exponents, so it's x to the 9th. Okay, so here's the thing. These are actually considered to be pretty simple, straightforward problems. They're just the one rule. The third one I gave you is probably a little more complex. It's got a little bit more going on. But, you know, more things are going to happen than that. And so I want to show you a couple examples. So here's one. So we have a 4 times x squared times y to the 3rd power, and then it's times x to the 5th. So here's the thing I need to tell you. You need to just take your time, and as you look at this, if you see anything that you can do, any kind of rule whatsoever, then do that rule, and don't worry about any of the other rules in here. Don't try to solve this problem in one step. Okay, take your time, do one rule at a time. Also, just like with PEMDAS, if you have parentheses, that's usually the first place you should focus. So if I look inside the parentheses here, right, because I do have parentheses, there's nothing I can do inside. If I ignore the rest of the world and I just look in here, there's nothing. See, it's an x and a y, and they're different, so I can't put the exponents together. We have just a 4 there. So then we look at what else is going on with the parentheses, and if we look at what else, we see that we have an exponent on there. And so the rule is if you have an exponent on the outside and you have things being multiplied on the inside, that we're going to take that exponent and we're going to apply it to all the things. And in this case, there are 3 things being multiplied. So if we apply that, we get 4 to the 3rd power, we have x squared to the 3rd power, and we have y to the 3rd power, and then we still have it x to the 5th multiplied at the end. Okay, now once again, we just step back and say, is there anything that you can notice, anything that you can do? Well, I don't know about you guys, I noticed there's a 4 to the 3rd, and we can do that math. 4 to the 3rd is 16. I also noticed that we have an exponent here raised to another exponent, and that was our second rule where we multiply those, so we get x to the 6th, and then we have y cubed, and then it's still times x to the 5th. Now I keep writing it the same way as it was written already. Every time here we have this multiplication sign, so I put that there. But you know, technically these are being multiplied and these are being multiplied. Technically these are all being multiplied, and that one at the end isn't special in any way. We just had it there originally. So what that means is, remember, multiplication is what we call commutative. We can reorder everything. So now I'm going to order it so that I have the 16, then I have x to the 6th. I'm going to move x to the 5th next to the other x so that we have more than one. Since we have more than one x, we can put them together next to each other. And if you remember, our first rule says if we multiply the same base, we could just add the exponents. So now I have 16, and I guess you can stop writing the 6 plus 5 and go ahead and just do the adding. So 6 plus 5 is 11, and then y cubed. Now we're done, and the way we know we're done is we only have one big number, one coefficient. We only have one x and we only have one y, so then there's nothing else really that we can do, and so this problem is finished. Okay, so let's see if we can find one more example. So how about this one? How about x, oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, how about we have x to the 3rd power times 2x squared, y to the 4th. Let's raise that to the 3rd power, and let's do another y value, and let's make that squared. So I've got a little bit more going on here. Once again, we want to focus in on parentheses. There's nothing to do in there but I can take that 3 and I can apply it to all 3 of these things, kind of similar to the last one. Okay, so I'm going to take that 3 and I'm going to multiply it. I'm going to apply it to all of these, so they all get an exponent. It's like Oprah, everything gets an exponent. All right, so we get 2 to the 3rd, x squared to the 3rd, y to the 4th to the 3rd, and then y squared. Whew, that was a lot. Okay, again, we're just looking at what do you see, what do you notice? Like we have math we can do there, right? I'll just leave x cubed. And we have 2 to the 3rd power, that's 8. And then, once again, we've got these guys right here, right? Where we have an exponent raised to another exponent, so we go ahead and multiply those. So we've got x to the 6th, y to the 12th, and then I have another y squared. Now once again, you'll see that we have x cubed and x to the 6th, and everything's being multiplied. We have y to the 12th and y to the squared, everything's being multiplied. So I'm going to rearrange all that. I'm going to put the coefficient first, then I'm going to put the x's, and then I'll put the y's. And then, because everything's being multiplied, the same bases, we add our exponents. So we still have the 8. We're going to have x to the 9th, because you have 3 plus 6, and we have y to the 14th. And that's pretty much it. Just take your time. I can't show you every possibility. I just can show you some of the examples and tell you just take your time and do one rule at a time, and eventually you'll get down to where you are done because you have just one coefficient, one x and one y. So the other thing that you might run into on these is after you're all done, they say evaluate. So tell you what we're talking about. All right, so here we have 5x squared squared, and they want you to evaluate when x equals 1. So the first thing you want to do, a lot of times, and sometimes it's not, sometimes you want to plug in 1 right away, but here what they're wanting you to do is apply this exponent to both things first, okay? So we have 5 squared and we have x squared squared. Remember, I'm using the bubble because I already have an exponent, so I don't want it to look like 22, so I put a parenthesis there. And then we get 5 squared is 25, and x squared squared, we'll multiply those, so we get x to the 4th. And now we can bring in that x equals 1. So we go ahead and we have 25, plug in 1 for x, and then we get 25 times 1 to the 4th. I'm doing PEMDAS, right? Exponents first. 1 to the 4th is just 1. And we can multiply those and we get 25. All right, so evaluate, do some simplifying, simplify, and then take and plug in the 1.